One is to do what you absolutely love. And I don't care what that is. Find whatever you are passionate about and try to make that your profession, right? Because I think when you do that, what we found is that inherent joy of that, right? That is, even though, yes, winemaking is a lot of work and this and that, but every day we wake up enthusiastic about what we're doing, right? And, 16, 17 years into this, like not a day has gone by, not one day has gone by where I woke up and said, oh my goodness, I wish I was back in tech, right? Never happened, right? And so to finding that joy in doing what you love absolutely every day, and the money will come, right? That's not the prime goal, but you want to live every day fulfilled with that joy of what you love to do. You can't waste another day doing things that you do not like to do.
Welcome to the Going Big podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Gentry, and this is the place where we celebrate bold moves and big ideas. Each week, I sit down with inspiring leaders, entrepreneurs, and change makers who are making a significant impact in their careers and in their communities. Whether you're looking to level up your leadership, pursue your passion, or just get inspired to take your next big leap, this is where those stories come to light. Now, if you're listening on iTunes, YouTube, or anywhere else you tune into podcasts, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss an episode. Now, let's dive in to what it means to truly go big. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited by this conversation today. I've been looking forward to this for a while. As my guests today are Pinto and Billo Naravane from Walla Walla, Washington, and they are extraordinary in how they are changing, in my view, the whole way we look at wine. Now, I'm really going big and setting the expectations high. So as you see from this conversation today, I think you're going to learn a lot. I think you're going to enjoy a lot. And I think you're going to be really inspired. Okay, guys, to start off with, what is ultra premium terroir-specific wine from Eastern Washington and Northeastern Oregon? I know that's your particular hole in the marketplace, but for our listeners, what is that?
It really is. I think what excites us most about wine are these wines that really showcase the terroir of the vineyards. That is, we want that site to speak. We want the varieties to speak and to be true to type. And we also kind of wanted to push the boundaries of quality for Washington State. So we are, even though we do have wines at lower price points, our primary focus is to really focus on these higher quality wines that really showcase the terroir of the vineyards and the variety and the prevailing climate of the season.
All right. So what you'll produce today is really amazing. So let me just give a little bit of the backstory. Several years ago, our local wine shop, the proprietor, his name is Brian Gothier. Brian has been big on Rasa wine for a long time. He would serve it. He would talk about it. We were intrigued. I think I may have done a webinar with at least one of you years ago. And so my wife and I said, let's go to Walla Walla. We've never been to Walla Walla, Washington. Let's go. So we did a summer trip to Seattle and drove 4 hours out to Eastern Washington State, and we experienced this extraordinary discovery of wine in that part of the country. All right, so with that said, tell folks, how in the world did you two get involved in wine? And tell us a little bit about your story. You're pretty much trained on the science side, and I don't think you plan to become vintners. So how did this all happen? I'll let you decide who goes first.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing was I graduated college in 88 and had my own place and started learning to cook. And I just got tired of drinking beer with whatever I was making. So I was playing around with wine. And then in 90, Billo graduated MIT and moved to Silicon Valley for work. And we would go visit, I would go visit him and we'd go up to the Napa Valley. And at that time, it was, you spent about $15 for the whole day, including lunch. So it was just beautiful. And it was a great entry And one of the times I was there, Billo and I were in a store that was going out of business, and they had the 88 Mouton for how much, Billo? $75 or $65?
No, 66, 66.
66,
Yes.
66. And but at the time it was, 12 times more than I ever spent on a bottle of wine. So we hemmed and hawed and we bought it. And it was our epiphany wine. Billo did have an experience with the Yquem before that, but it was an absolute revelation. And we saved a little bit for the next day, and it was even better. And that started us off on our journey. We had computer science, math, and engineering backgrounds, and this became a passion for us immediately. And as we got more and more involved in wine, the more and more we felt we wanted to start our winery. And that was, we were very good at what we did, but there wasn't a passion there. And Billo had an opportunity. He applied to the UC Davis Master's Program in 2006 in viticulture and enology. They took 10 people that year with a preference for industry, and Billo got in. And he's a graduate of MIT and Stanford, and I joked that it was harder for him to get into this program than anything. But it is that and University of Bordeaux are probably the two top best schools in the world for that. And he got in, and he called me up and asked me, how serious I was about starting a winery. And it was the same year I was turning 40. This was in 2006. And I thought, if we don't do it now, we never will, and we'll regret it. So Billo quit Hewlett Packard down in Texas, moved to UC Davis. I spent 10 months crafting a business plan. And before he was out, we made 2 wines in 2007. One of them got 94 points from Wine Spectator, and one got a perfect rating from a local critic, Rand Seeley, a review of Washington wines. And that's the way we started.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's all incredibly fascinating. But you all were in Silicon Valley and San Francisco and that area, Napa area. How did you end up in Walla Walla? Billo, how did you go from UC Davis to Eastern Washington?
Yeah, Pinto and I, we started with wine. We've always have loved wines from California, particularly Napa, Sonoma, and we've been to these regions and really, really love them. So we started looking at land in 2006 in Napa and Sonoma. And as you can imagine, the prices are always very, very expensive. Even the land we were looking at back then, $250,000, $300,000 an acre. By today, it's selling for more than $1 million an acre, so it's a good deal. But there's no way we could even afford that. That was not possible. So our winemaker friends in California said, "Go check out Washington. Really cool things are happening up there. The weather is fantastic. The terroir is fantastic." So we came up on a scouting trip in, I believe it was March of 2007.
February.
February. And then, so we hired a geologist to kind of take us through all the areas that he thought was really interesting for vineyard sites. So we spent a few days out here. We tasted as many wines as we could. It was just we're 4 days, I think, out there. And then we tasted, hundreds of wines. And what we notice is that the fruit quality in Washington is absolutely excellent, but we oftentimes felt that the winemaking didn't do the fruit justice in many instances. So we said, all right, here's a potential opportunity. We could come up to Washington, hopefully execute things a bit more precisely on the winemaking front. The terroir is fantastic. The fruit's fantastic. How do you establish yourselves as a front runner in Napa? You have 200 plus wineries making absolutely amazing things, prohibitively expensive to enter the market. And just out of a serendipity on that trip, we met a gentleman who specializes in vineyard and winery properties, and he showed Pinto initially the parcel in the Rocks district. It's a 28-acre parcel. We drove down there. Pinto's like, "You got to come check this out. It's amazing." So we went there and did the soil analysis on the property, and it came back absolutely textbook for Syrah, parts for Grenache, parts for Viognier, and every bit as good on a qualitative basis as the land we're looking at in Napa, Sonoma, and the average price was just about 25,000 an acre. And being math guys, we're like, hey, we can quickly figure this out. That was the better deal. Yeah. So that's how we wound up here in Walla Walla, and our vineyard property is just across the border on the Oregon side in the Rocks district in Walla Walla Valley.
Adding to what Billo said, and the price was a big factor for us going to Walla Walla. But as I was developing a business plan, three pillars really stood out for me of what I wanted. And one of them was meet the best wines in the world. We want to be in that discussion with First Growth Bordeaux and Chave and Chapoutier and, whoever else you could think of. And we wanted to be in that mix. The second thing is we wanted to be a leader in our niche market. And the third thing, as importantly, was we wanted to change the local economic paradigm and have this be something more meaningful than just a good business model for ourselves. So when we got to Walla Walla in 2007, it was evident that the fruit quality was exceptional. It was evident that there were a few really good players, and there were a lot of not so good players. And I think it's such a small community that what was evident was people were copying each other. Winemaker friends were, if one winemaker friend had a modicum of success, the other one would copy him. And the way I knew that is because before I can tell the terroir of Walla Walla, I was able to pick the wines out blind because of the faults that were perpetuated in the wines, and they were basically the same fault. So we knew right there that a grape quality was exceptional. We could, in quick time, become a leader in our niche market, and Walla Walla was in 2007, where we felt Napa was in 85, 86, where Sonoma was in 92, 93. So we felt that we could really contribute locally and kind of lift all boats type of idea. So the cost and everything else just jived. And, we left thinking this is the place for us.
Yeah, Pinto, just to add one more thing. I was at a trade tasting in 2008 for Walla Walla Wines. And there were about 55 wines, and 18 of them had significant faults, either volatile acidity, Brettanomyces, oxidation, premature oxidation, etc. And I remember calling Pinto, and that's a 33% basically, right, of the wines that are, in my opinion, should not have been bottled, right? They were flawed. And I told Pinto, I said, "Wow, I just came back from this thing, and yeah, I'm not kidding, but 18 out of these 55 wines were a bit of a train wreck. Is how I described it." And Pinto's like, "Wow, that's really shocking." And then we did tastings, kind of after that, and what was happening is that a lot of the winemakers at these places, they weren't formally trained, and they were just copying what their neighbors were doing. Right. And that's how they were. So the good methods were being propagated, but also the bad methods were being propagated. Right. So you had this high incidence of rather flawed wines in the beginning. That has drastically changed today. I'm very, very happy to say generally we don't see that level of percentage by any means, but that was the case back in 2008.
What clinched it for us was I live on the East Coast. I live in New Jersey. And I was doing market research, in the various stores. I'd go around and I'd surreptitiously follow people around and see what they're buying and all that. But I was in this one store and they had Cayuse, which even in 2007, Cayuse was this cult winery in Washington where it's sold out on release. So this one place had a bottle of Cayuse on the Red Dot special. They couldn't sell it. It was like 50% off. And that's when I called Billo. I said, this is ridiculous. If on the East Coast, people still don't know what Walla Walla is and they haven't heard of Cayuse, this is a great opportunity to hit one of our pillars that we could be a leader in a niche market. And so that helped clinch it for us for sure.
Okay, well, this is great. I love the fact that you're science and math guys and the way that you've approached this. I love your attitude about just lifting all boats and that you're helping everybody else do better by pushing the limits. A couple things, for our listeners, some of our listeners may think, I know exactly where Walla Walla is. I've been there. I know what you're talking about. I agree. It's one of the definite up and coming rising top spots in the world today. Others are saying, what are you talking about? When my wife and I drove out there, it was during the heat dome of 2021. When we went to the Yakima Valley, on the way there, the car thermometer was 118. And when we got checked into our hotel in Walla Walla, the bank thermometer, you probably know exactly which one I'm talking about, on one of those street corners, was 113. I took a picture of it. So it's different out there. Tell us just a little bit about the climate as well. And for people who don't understand, what is the Rocks District and what was the Missoula flood and what is all of that about?
Well, what I started, you could jump in below anytime you want. That's that. The climate in Eastern Washington, it was hugely informed by the Missoula floods and also by the Cascade Mountain Range. Everyone, you mentioned Washington. We have so many people asking us, isn't it really wet over there? The Cascade Mountain Range causes a rain shadow effect. So basically what happens is this cool air coming from the Pacific Ocean and going eastward will go over Seattle and it will precipitate, and you'll get about 36 inches of precipitation in Seattle. And then as it hits the foothills of the Cascades and it travels up, the precipitation per year increases. And at the top of the Cascades, it's about 100 inches of precipitation a year. But when you go to the other side, as you go down towards Yakima, you're dropping down to about 8 inches of rainfall. You get to Red Mountain, it's about 4 inches. In Walla Walla, depending on where, it's anywhere from 8 to 12. So without that rain shadow effect, Eastern Washington couldn't have been, in my opinion, a great area.
So, and that's another thing that took me a while to understand, and I'm still learning so much about wine, but you want those grapes to kind of fight, really struggle to find water and go deep. And those, the whole metaphor about deep roots is an important part of this, right?
Yeah. So what's really important is you don't want the grapevines to have access to infinite amounts of water, right? They become fat, dumb, and lazy, right? And they don't produce grapes of any complexity. So we have the situation where we have roughly 11 to 12 inches of water of rainfall here in Walla Walla. Most of it happens in November and February, March timeframe, and grapes need about 18 inches of water to make it through the growing season, right? That's kind of the bare minimum. So we actually prefer to be in this scenario where we're slightly below what the grapes need. So virtually every vineyard here in Washington State is irrigated, drip irrigated. And we actually prefer that greatly because we can 100% dial in how much water the grapevine sees. And what we like to do is, and numerous scientific studies have shown this, that the grapevines that are under medium to medium plus levels of water stress generally produce more flavorful berries and higher phenolic content in the berries. And that directly translates to more interesting, better wines. So we like this scenario where we're below what the grapes need and we can dial in exactly. Now, that takes a fair amount of monitoring in the vineyard to make sure you do it correctly and not impose too much stress on the vines. So we do kind of manage that to the utmost effect to help maximize the quality of the grapes.
All right. One other question to this, and then I'm going to go to some other things about your vision and your going big. You mentioned the Missoula floods. This is not like, one of the hurricanes in the past 10 years. This is a long, long, long time ago. But the Rocks District, the grapes are growing in rocks. You're kind of stacking these stones up around. Can you explain that briefly too? Because it's really crazy.
Yeah, so all of these basalt cobblestones, they're up in the hills in the blues, and all of the water kind of carries down through Milton Freewater, and we kind of hit this fan, if you will, in Milton Freewater, where all of these rocks, basalt cobblestones, are getting deposited. So it is roughly a 3 square mile area. It is, the size of a postage stamp as far as AVAs go. But it literally is a rock bed that is, in average depth is about 80 feet, right, of this basalt cobblestones that are roughly the size of softballs, right? So you can imagine trying to plant vineyards in this medium because of all the rocks there. The water holding capacity of the soil is very low. It's easy draining on water. So we got to add even more water to make sure that the plants are happy in that medium stress zone. And also because of that, we get root penetration deep into the soil. As the vines are getting stressed for water, they start pushing their roots out into the soil profile to access more water and nutrients. So, we found roots all the way, 20 feet deep, 30 feet deep. We can see some root vines from the grapevines down there. And that's quite unusual. And I think that really helps to contribute to this beautiful, beautiful expression of terroir and minerality that we get in the Rocks District that is absolutely profound and unique. There is no other place like it in the world.
There's a wonderful savoriness that you get out of these wines and a wonderful tight structure. And we believe it's due to that soil. To put it in perspective, there's really nothing like it in the world of wine, the soil. If you think of Châteauneuf-du-Pape and you think of the big stones, big rocks there, the difference there is they go down about roughly 5 feet, maybe 6 feet, and then there's a clay subsolum, and clay has some nutrient or water retention properties. So they hit that clay and they can get some of the water that they need. Ours, there is no subsoil. You're going 80 to 100 feet deep. So there's nothing for the vines to do but go deeper and deeper. And the interesting thing about most vines is that they only want to go so far deep. They don't necessarily want to go 20 feet deep. They want to anchor properly. They want to go about roughly 6 feet or so. And to get nutrients, they have feeder roots that grow more horizontal. But since there's nothing there, but the roots have no choice but to go deep and go down 20, 30 feet. And we believe that translates to this unique wine.
Fascinating. Okay. So when you decided to build a winery in Walla Walla, what exactly, you touched on it, but tell us a little bit more about your vision. And did you have some initial goals? And then my next follow-up question is going to be, tell me about some of those first wines, those first harvests, and then bring us up to where you are today.
Yeah, well, our first harvest, the first 3 harvests, we made it at an alternate proprietorship. So that's a facility where they have all the equipment that you can use. You bring in your own barrels and your grapes and you make wine. And it's a cost-effective way to start. So that's how we started. And then in 2010, we moved into our own facility in Walla Walla. Initially, I think, we made some mistakes. The wines were stellar. But we really didn't have a place to sell. So I think initially we grew too quickly. We're not talking a lot of wine. We're talking first year was 700 cases, but the next year was 1,200. And then the third year was 1,800. But we really didn't have a good avenue to sell. And so it took us a bit to get through that. And it was when we started getting into wine in the 90s, if a wine got a 94 or a perfect rating or something, the wine gets sold out within the day. The wine's all sold out. And I guess we were still thinking that would be the case. And we got tremendous, we had a perfect from Rand Seeley of Review of Washington Wines. He gave us a perfect rating in each wine in 07, 08, and 09. And it still took some hand selling to sell out of those. So I think that was a big learning. That was the biggest takeaway I take from that early is that we weren't prepared to how much hand selling you would actually have to do, regardless of if you make beautiful wines that get highly rated.
And by the way, let me just say, I'm a big fan. I got your 2010 In Order to Form a More Perfect Union. I love the title of it and the label, and it's perfect for our time and stuff. But I served it for my birthday last year, and it was phenomenal. And so that was really awesome. 2010, going to your first years. But then you have all these science ideas, and your labels are, QED, Occam's Razor, Principia. It's your personalities are coming out. But what are you most excited about? What are you most proud of?
Certainly, I think I'm proud of all of our wines, but there's a few that are very, very special to me. I think our 2008 Creative Impulse, which is a Bordeaux blend from a vineyard in Yakima. To me, it absolutely hits every note of nuance and balance and beautifully poised wine that is just aging so gracefully. Had a bottle not too long ago, and we are 16 years into that wine, and it's still developing and improving. Right, so it's still on the upswing. So it probably has another 3 to 4 years to hit full maturity. And then we'll probably hang out for 10, 15 years at that level and then start declining a bit. But that wine is when me and Pinto, we love Bordeaux, we love Rhone Valley, we love Burgundy as well. So we're huge Francophiles, and we're not unabashed to say that. But to make a great Bordeaux style wine, of course the terroir in Washington is different. Where there's no way we're going to be able to make a Mouton Rothschild and have that beautiful terroir expression that Mouton has. But we kind of are able to look to those for inspiration and winemaking. But we have studied the techniques of all of these amazing wineries, and we do bring that into house to kind of craft our own Bordeaux style. And with that 2008 Creative Impulse, I really firmly believe that we got everything that we wanted, right? And so here we have this wine that we made, that we're having and have served in numerous times to our friends and collector friends and our customers side by side, along with the great First Gross of Bordeaux, and that wine deserves to be alongside with them, right? So that's an extremely proud moment for me for pouring that 2008 Creative Impulse, and I would also the other wines I'm proud of. I would say is two wines from the 2010 and 11 vintage. And the reason I say that is because those were very stressful years in the vineyard, as we had it was cooler growing seasons than what Washington is typically used to. We had a lot of powdery mildew issues. We had botrytis set in red wines, which is quite unusual. So those years, it was possible to make great wines, and I think we certainly did, but it took a great deal of effort to do that and knowledge to do that. Right? A vintage like recently 2023 was a textbook vintage, right? Honestly, you'd have to try to mess it up, right? So if in 2023 you as a winery didn't make good to very good wines at the very least, you might want to find a different profession, right? Because that's about as easy as it gets. Now, 2010 and 11 were quite the opposite, right? There you had I was just waiting for the locust plague to set in to see what the heck is happening. Like we had everything negative happen in those years. And yet we were able to craft like that 2010 Perfect Union you had, I think is one of our stellar wines that's aging gracefully and beautifully. But that year, me and Pinto, we really had to work to make that happen, right? That's where the knowledge and the not only scientific knowledge, but you certainly have to have that, but it is really the amount of time and effort that we spent into honing our craft from a sensory perspective, and on the winemaking side to really be able to make those wines that are that outstanding in those difficult vintages. So, of course, I am very, very proud of those vintages as well. Pinto, you wanna?
And I agree with you, because I even said to Billo, because Billo was our winemaker at the time. I'm the winemaker now, and I rely on Billo's expertise. So I have that going for me. But Billo made three perfectly rated wines in '07, '08, and '09. And then 2000 comes along, and I said, okay, this vintage is going to, I believe that you are a great winemaker, but this vintage is going to tell me if you are or not, because it was a hard vintage. And you've had the 2010 Perfect Union. All across the board, those wines were stellar. I was so proud of Billo. He really, it's not just knowledge, but it is an understanding of, because there's so much non-linear connections that go on with the compounds in wine, and you really have to have a deep understanding of it, and you have to also at the same time have a artistic sensibility to let the grapes speak in a healthy way and get the best wine out. And Billo has that. And to me, that 2000 vintage really solidified Billo as one of the best.
2010, you said 2000.
Oh, yeah, not 2000. 2010 vintage really solidified Billo as, in my mind, as one of the best winemakers in the world. The wines are fantastic. From a business side, it ended up being our most expensive vintage because we dropped about 65% of our fruit in the vineyard and then some more at the sorting table. And you put it on paper on a business plan, so no matter what, we're going to make the best wines. So if we have to drop fruit, we have to drop fruit. But then you look at the potential revenue loss, and you still stick to your guns. I think that was something Billo and I were staring at. It's like, are we insane? But we did the right thing because our wines are absolutely stellar, and I think it proved that Rasa deserves to be on the map when it comes to great wines.
Well, this is great. I mean, I'm learning a lot in this conversation, and I hope our listeners are too. And I've got some now related questions. So,
Kevin, can I just jump in?
Go right ahead.
Just to put a final point, I agree with Billo that 2008 Creative is probably my favorite wine. There's a couple of other ones. Our philosophy is that there's good wine, there's bad wine, good wine, great wine. But what we're trying to hit, and I believe we make great wine consistently, but what we're trying to hit is transformational wine. And what that means is like, it's an art form. It's like when you listen to a great piece of music or you look at a great painting, or you read a great poem, and you're transformed into something, right? You're in a different state. And that's our holy grail of winemaking. We want to make a wine that is a transformative wine. And I think that '08 Creative, and then there's a couple others that I think it's as close as we've come. And so I'm very proud of those wines.
Well, you anticipated where I was going, because transformation is the name of the game here. This is, after all, the Going Big podcast. I so appreciate this. Years ago, a boss of mine really suggested that I needed to learn wine because of the nature of my work and working with customers, and he was right. And it just so happened, as I mentioned, I met Brian Gothier at the Oakton Wine Shop, who told me about you, and he also told me about Jim Law in Virginia at Linden. And Jim is very much similar to you all, and he's just testing and experimenting and just trying to lift all boats and get people better. And I've learned so much from both of you all in your approach, and I really commend you for that. There's just so many other lessons, not just about wine, in this conversation. Now, though, I'm going to bring this to the same point. You shared with me a couple days ago a bottle that you're debuting very soon. It's your family name, Naravane, and beautiful label. What you're doing with the labels, too, that's in and of itself. That could be another podcast. But I opened it up last night. My wife and I had some. And then I invited Brian Gothier over because he introduced me to you all and helped me learn so much about wine, and let him have some. I saved a little bit because I'm going to have some for this conversation. But he told me as he drank it that it was clearly some of the best wine that he had ever drank, and was on par with Harlan and also some of the best Bordeaux. It was a bit of an epiphany too. I don't feel like I have a trained and mature palate, but I felt like the complexity of this and all the stuff going on, it is amazing. And so for those of you who are listening and not as accustomed to wine, there's so much more ahead of you to learn and enjoy. But tell me about this wine as I enjoy it.
Yeah, so this certainly is one of my favorites as well. Our 2021 Nerone. We wanted to also kind of, I would say, push the boundaries, but I think that's close enough. It is there are all these amazing wines at the very, very high end of the price spectrum from Napa Valley. Screaming Eagle, Schrader, Harlan, and they are fabulous wines. Don't get me wrong, but they're pushing $2,000, $2,500 a bottle. Screaming Eagle, Harlan, I believe, is like $1,700 a bottle now. And we've always have, I think out of all of the wines, we always, me and Pinto have loved Harlan, right? It is a wine that transcends price, quite honestly, right? It is just this magical thing of beauty, and just the experience it delivers on the palate, on the aromatics, on the finish of those wines are simply breathtaking. So we wanted to set out to kind of have a wine at that level with that type of experience. And, Washington today doesn't have anything that is at that super, super luxury category at that $800, $1,000 price point. And we're like, well, why doesn't it? We firmly believe in the quality that Washington can deliver. Right. So we wanted to make this super, super luxury product that was no holds barred, going for the moon in terms of quality, and everything that we can do to drive that. And, coming out at, the wine will be releasing in a couple months, and it will have an $800 price tag. That certainly is going to raise some eyebrows here, because most people in Washington don't know about that this is coming, right? But they will now, right? But it's gonna, I don't know. I told Pinto, I said, we're going to get some arrows on our backs from people like, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Or this or that? I said to Pinto, I said, well, none of them have tasted the wine yet, right? The wine speaks for itself. They can get that in front of them and taste that. The wine is undeniably gorgeous. It deserves a 100-point rating. It is a work of art. At this point, it has transcended beverage to art, right? And this is the way we view the winemaking at our reserve tier. This is not about, there is no formula for this, right? We are not. And the reason I love winemaking so much is that every year the grapes come into the winery, and me and Pinto, we're at the crush pad, literally tasting the grapes, tasting the stalks, and we are adjusting the winemaking protocol to best suit that lot of grapes that year. And we're so in a very real sense, we haven't made wine the same way twice. And I think this is why we haven't gotten bored of it either, right? It's just this fabulous process. The grapes come in with these intrinsic characters. How are you going to best change the winemaking protocols that you're using to showcase those to the fullest? And there has to be this artistic stamp on the greatest wines, right? You're not making wines by the numbers, adding in this much titratable acidity and this and that, and matching those profiles. It has to have that artistic stamp on it to make it compelling. And I really, really think with that 21 Nerone, we knocked it out of the park, unquestionably, right? And we will only make the Nerone in a year that both me and Pinto feel we have 100-point wine, right? We're never going to compromise on that. And I think I said to Pinto when I was tasting this stuff, I thought we did it in 2021 for sure, right? Here it is. And then Pinto, you want to add anything?
Yeah, everything. I agree with everything Billo said. And this wine kind of speaks to that third pillar of our business plan, changing the local economic paradigm, lifting all boats. What we're saying with our $800 bottles, we're making a statement that Eastern Washington terroir is on par with the best terroirs in the world, and it needs to be respected as such. So we have a wine of a caliber that can compete with the Harlans and the Schraders and the Moutons or whatever, and so it needs to be priced appropriately. Now, pricing at $800 for Washington, I don't think there's any wine above $250 or 300, not that I know of. But this is a big statement, but it's a statement saying that we are not the bastard cousin of Napa Valley. We are on equal footing. We can make wines as compelling, if not more so, and we want to be respected. So the price represents that, as well as the actual what's in the bottle, the beauty of the bottle.
Well, that's fantastic. I've always been intrigued by value wines because wines from Chile and South Africa and even Portugal and even other parts of the United States are not at the same price point as Napa or Bordeaux, which produce great wines, granted. But, the perceived value there is much greater than perhaps even the true subjective value. And so I'm glad to see that you all are rising up to where the subjective value is. And let me just say, this wine is spectacular. It was a real struggle for me to keep a little bit to enjoy during our podcast today.
Oh, thank you.
But it's really spectacular. And I didn't know that I was going to be given the exclusivity to announcing this news through the podcast when it comes out. So all the better, ladies and gentlemen. Rasa, RASA Winery. Check it out online. By the way, your website is great too, and I love that you have an aging chart to help anytime remind me when the wine is right at its perfection. All right, I got a couple of wrap-up questions. We had a conversation a few months ago about principled entrepreneurship, a little bit. I had Andreas Widmer on from the Catholic University of America talking about Art Sioka, who developed box wine, really brought wine to the masses, but his whole idea of principled entrepreneurship, where everybody is a winner. You all look to ways to raise money for different causes. You have your the humane label. Tell us a little bit about that. Why you do it? What your thoughts are there?
There's a saying, a philosophy that gets played out. You see it a lot in politics, which is, we don't want to give money to other countries until we have so many problems in our own country. So a saying is, let's take care of our house first before you take care of something else. In other words, keep your U.S. dollars in the U.S. Now, I could respect that viewpoint, but my personal feeling is that the way I take care of my house is in part to take care of someone else. That is part of what I do as a human. So we decided that we don't want to wait. Billo and I, Rasa Vineyards is still carrying a lot of debt, and we struggle like any small business does. And we could say, whoa, let's just use all this money to lower our debt first and get out of our own pain and then give. And we could do that, but we could keep doing that and keep putting it off. But that doesn't fulfill us. What fulfills us is saying, we may be struggling this and that, but we're going to do what's right. We're going to give to causes that we believe in. So we created our 2018 Humane. It was the first year that our vintage had fruit. So the first year, to celebrate the fact that this is our estate fruit, we created a bottle called Humane, and 70% of the gross sales go to charities. And in 3 years, the 3 vintages that we've done it, we raised a little over $100,000 to give away. And we give away to Alzheimer's Foundation, cancer, teen suicide prevention, domestic abuse situations. So and we wanted a global feel to this. So what we do is we get an artist from a different country every year. So the first year was this woman from Durban, South Africa, and she created this beautiful label. So most of the money we keep in the United States and give away, but we gave money. She wanted domestic abuse was a big issue in South Africa, especially with post-COVID. So we gave money to lawyers against domestic abuse in South Africa, at which I still continue to give on a personal level. And then next year, it was a South Korean artist, and like she had a thing where there's still a stigma against single mothers in South Korea, where so the kids don't get the education or they don't get the nutrition. So we donate to a charity that helps out single mothers. So then we have one in Taiwan, And the latest one that'll come out this year, I'm sorry, that just came out in December, is from an Israeli, Jewish Israeli artist. And the ones we're getting ready to bottle now for next year is a Peruvian artist. And the idea is that every year we'll continue to give a little money to these countries while most of the money stays here. And it's just to say that the world is a community, and yes, take care of yourselves. No question. Make money, take care of yourselves, enjoy life. I'm not against any of that, but all along you should be giving.
That's very nice. That's awesome. Well, one challenge question for you, and then 2 wrap-up questions. Artificial intelligence. How is that going to affect your business, the industry? I will say, ahead of this podcast, I asked Claude, I said, for the next Going Big podcast episode, I'm going to be interviewing Pinto and Billo Naravane from Rasa and Walla Walla. What questions should I ask? And it was amazing. He said, they are known for their scientific approach. You should ask them about this. And again, it helped influence some of the questions. Although it did get something wrong. It said because y'all were working on the Central Coast. So I don't know where that came from. But what effect does artificial intelligence have in terms of your industry, do you think, going forward?
I think the innovations that are going to come, and we see some of on the technology side, has to do with grape harvesters. So we're able to. Labor is going to be a big issue, right? With the migrant labor force in vineyards, we see this already being a challenge, starting to be a challenge here in Washington. The move towards mechanization in the vineyards is going to happen, right? This is already happened in Australia, New Zealand, all these other places, right? So it's inevitable that it happens here. Now the technology is improving so much that with the use of AI, you can selectively harvest the grapes and then eject the ones that have any disease on them or mildew pressure or things like that, or that are are less than perfect. You can sort on the harvester has a sorting bin and optical scanners that you can put on there and have. So at the end of the harvest, as you pick them, you have very, very clean grapes coming in. So we already are seeing some of that technology there. I think AI, there's been some talk about the tank monitorings during fermentation and stuff like that. There is some software that's available now already. I think that's only going to get better with the use of AI technology. That is, you can, as a winemaker, say, okay, I want this temperature profile curve on the fermentations, and here's what I want to follow. And then the software can essentially track that for you and make sure it's cooling and warming up things at the right time to achieve that fermentation curve. So I think that's going to be a pretty interesting use of that. One other aspect of technology, which I don't think will be quite as successful, is they're also looking at, well, what constitutes a great wine, right? And using this electronic nose, so to speak, to try to identify what are the characteristics in a great wine, and try to use that to maybe assist in the blending process to achieve that. Now, that's an interesting goal, but the reason I say I don't think it will be successful, at least not in the near term, is that to date, we've only have identified 10% of the chemical compounds in wine. Wine is an extremely complex media in terms of all of these little chemicals that are running around. They're morphing into other chemicals and combining and splitting and things like that. It is literally, the way I explain to people is that it is literally, an order of magnitude more complex than human blood. Right. So if you think of what your body does and transferring all the stuff all over, shuttling things all over your body, and what it has to do, wine as a medium is 10 times more complex than that. And we've only identified, like I said, less than 10% of the compounds that we know of in wine. 90% of it is still unknown. So, maybe AI helps us to map that out. I'm not sure, but that task of using AI to craft these perfect wines, while this has been proposed, I think is still a bit out in the future. I don't think that's an impact in the next 10 years or so. But those are the 3 key areas that I see.
Wow. Well, my wife and I, mostly my wife, prepares usually 2 or 3 nights a week a Blue Apron meal, one of the food delivery meals that just works well for our lifestyle. And I would try to figure out the wine pairing. And a year or so ago, it would be like, Sauvignon Blanc. That would be the answer. We prepared, let's see, salmon with everything bagel spices and a cream sauce with dill. And I said, what kind of wine would it go well with? And it said, it was more specific. I asked Claude, and it said, a Chablis style, Chardonnay, a couple other different things. And I said, well, what about the Linden, the one I mentioned in Virginia, Linden 2017 Village Chardonnay, which I thought might fit the category. And it says, excellent choice. The minerality there will fit perfectly. And it does, it's more of an unoaked Chablis, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was amazing. Just amazing. I mean, and we felt like the pairing was perfect. The salmon was better and the wine was better for the pairing. It's crazy. Just crazy. All right. Let's close out. I have 2 final questions. One is, you started Rasa when you were 40. Looking back at your younger self, what would you advise that younger self to have done differently?
To start sooner.
Amen. That's a great answer.
Yeah, and certainly I would advise myself start sooner, but also go slower. We like I said, we grew a little too quick, and we took on a little too much debt. I would certainly, from a business perspective, would not have taken on that much debt. And it did help us propel to grow a little bit, but at the same time, now it's holding us back. So, and we're dealing with clearing that plate. So I would say a little more, I've always been a dreamer, always been an entrepreneur. I started my first company in 93, focusing on wide area connectivity. And I wish my younger self, I wish that I would tell them, have the confidence that you will have in the upcoming years, but have the confidence earlier. For me, confidence was a hard-fought thing that I ended up getting in my late 20s. And just to be the opposite, Billo was always a confident kid as far as I could tell. And that's something I've always admired about him. For me, it was something I had to strive to get. And I would have told my younger self to say, you have everything. You have everything to be a great person, and just believe in yourself and go.
Yeah, and I think kind of the same thing that Pinto said. I wish we had started it a little bit earlier as well. We're Indian descent, right? Or we're born in India. We have very, very conservative Indian parents, right? And I joke with my customer. I says, as far as any good Indian parent, there's only 2 or 3 acceptable career paths in life, right? Winemaking is not one of them, right? You can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you still can be a scientist, engineer. That's perfectly fine. But a winemaker, hell no, right? So, so we were strongly guided down this technical path. As kids, Dad was always like, go study your math, and me and Pinto, we wound up in math and computer science, electrical engineering. It just happened that we happened to be really good at that stuff, right? So it was fine in one sense. The jobs that we got, Pinto started his own business. I worked for some companies, Oracle and Netscape and things like that in Silicon Valley. And it was fine. It paid the bills, made a good living, all of that stuff. But we quickly found out, I remember having a discussion with Pinto in mid-20s, 24. So I was 24, he was 26. I said, we are, such science geek, right? I said, we have no creative outlets in our life. It's like, what the heck, we do this and we're working and we're learning all this. And no creative outlets. And as a kid, I'd love to draw and really want to play piano. And my dad was always like, quit dinking around with this art stuff. You can't make a living at it. Go study your math, right? That was always kind of the answer. So at 24, I was my roommate at that time. I came home from work one day, and there's a upright piano in the living room. I'm like, his name's Peter. I said, Peter, what the hell's this doing here? All of a sudden we had this piano in our apartment. So I started learning piano at 24 or so, and, largely self-taught. I was traveling a lot as a consultant. So I would, stay at hotels that had pianos and go play in the lobby and all that stuff. So I love piano so much. I still play it today, mostly classical stuff. And Pinto, he didn't talk about it, but he's a writer, so he writes fiction and all that stuff. And I think after a few years of doing this art stuff, we're joking like, hey, we're pretty good at this art stuff too. There's no reason to pigeonhole us as science geeks, right? We can do this stuff. And this winery is very much born out of that need to create, right? Like I alluded to earlier, yes, there is this science component in grape growing and winemaking, all that. Absolutely true that you need that foundation, but you also need to have that artistic sensibilities and that artistic stamp on things to really make the wines be compelling. And this is what I absolutely love about wine. And I just wish we had found it sooner. That's what I would tell my younger self. That right.
Great advice. Great advice. All right. Well, this is the final question to close us out. This is the Going Big podcast. What would you say to folks listening at any age about how they might think of continuing to live a life full of purpose and meaning as you all have? How would you encourage them, inspire them to think big and go big? I'll let you choose who gets to go first.
Okay. What I would say is we found our way to wine and the winery and all this stuff. And so one is to do what you absolutely love. And I don't care what that is. Find whatever you are passionate about and try to make that your profession, right? Because I think when you do that, what we found is that inherent joy of that, right? That is, even though, yes, winemaking is a lot of work and this and that, but every day we wake up enthusiastic about what we're doing, right? And, 16, 17 years into this, like not a day has gone by, not one day has gone by where I woke up and said, oh my goodness, I wish I was back in tech, right? Never happened, right? And so to finding that joy in doing what you love absolutely every day, and the money will come, right? That's not the prime goal, but you want to live every day fulfilled with that joy of what you love to do. Right. And I think that's what I would leave people with. And it doesn't matter what your age. We found our way to the winery, at 40-ish years old. Could have been sooner. Yeah. But if somebody's, wanting to do something like that, if they're 50 or if my age, 56 now, right. Please get to it. The time is ticking, right? So, you can't waste another day doing things that you do not like to do, right? So, yeah.
That's awesome, Billo. All right. Pinto, you get the final word.
Yeah. My answer is that, as a couple of things. One is failure is not a bad thing. You shouldn't be afraid of failure, and you should not be held back because of failure. Failure is how you grow. I have 3 children. When they were growing up, every day when I pick them up from school, one of my questions was, what did you get wrong today? And they would proudly say, I didn't get anything wrong. I said, so did you not learn? If you got everything right, there's just verification that you know your stuff, but you haven't grown. You haven't learned something. So there's nothing wrong when you embrace failure. But the other thing is fight your inertia. Part of the failure is you may have a fear of failure. You may have a fear of success. You may have a fear of, I'm not perfect. If you want to write, I can't write like Dostoevsky. So what's the point? No, get out there and do it. Baby steps is better than just getting mired in inertia. Billo's right. Time is precious and it's ticking. So figure out what you want to do and do it.
Well, Billo and Pinto, this has been a delightful conversation and enjoyable. Thank you for giving your time. Thank you for producing great wine. Thank you for having us to just think bigger and go bigger too. It's a great inspiration. Looking forward to hearing how the wine debuts in April. Ladies and gentlemen, Rasa Vineyards, check it out. You'll love it. Guys, thank you so much. Really appreciate what you do.
Kevin, thank you. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks for tuning in to the Going Big podcast. I hope today's conversation left you feeling energized and ready to tackle your biggest goals. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps spread the word, and it gets these inspiring stories out to more people. You can also find more content, resources, and updates at our website, goingbigpodcast.com. Remember, the only limits are the ones you don't challenge, the limits that you impose on yourself. Keep pushing, keep growing, and above all, keep going big. See you next time on the Going Big Podcast.